DRM is an acronym for Digital Rights Management. Simply put, it is a broad term that refers to any method of preventing the unauthorized access or copying of a piece of digital media without the permission of a copyright holder. The rise of digital media and analog-to-digital conversion technologies has increased the concerns of copyright owners, particularly the music and video industries. While analog media inevitably loses quality with each copy generation and during normal use, digital media files may be duplicated without limits and with no degradation. Digital devices make it convenient for consumers to convert media originally in a physical, analog, or broadcast form into a digital form for portability or later use. Combined with the internet and file sharing tools, unauthorized distribution of copyrighted content was made much easier. Designed by Japanese engineer Ryuichi Moriya in 1983, the Software Service System was the first example of DRM technology. It was based on encryption and made use of special hardware that controlled decryption and allowed payments to be sent to the copyright holder. In the world of gaming, certain Nintendo Entertainment System games would pause the game and prompt the player to look up a certain page in the game manual for a code. If the player didn't have access to the manual, they would be unable to progress further. This one is pretty silly to me because I'm sure there were tons of kids who threw out the manual in the cardboard box that the game came in and accidentally screwed themselves. In the 80s, this method of off-disk copy protection was very common and used with many PC games and software stored on floppy disks. During this era, game and software companies got very creative coming up with novel anti-piracy measures, none of which ended up being particularly effective and served to be more of a nuisance to the people who bought their product legitimately. The code wheel was a very popular method which required the player to use a decoder wheel to uncover a hidden code required by the game. Alternatively, special printed code sheets would come with the game which supposedly couldn't be read by a photocopier. That is, until photocopying technology advanced not much later on. All of these methods, of course, could be copied by anyone determined enough and ultimately were just a pain for anyone who wanted to play the game. Moving on to the early days of the CD-ROM, many games using this format had no copy protection at all, such as the 3DO console. In the beginning, disk copying hardware was prohibitively expensive, and the average person's hard drive couldn't store 600 megabytes anyways. Eventually, games on disks would have a serial code that came in the packaging and you would need to input it during installation. Once the copying capabilities of consumer hardware advanced enough, rights holders deemed more advanced methods were necessary to employ. This was the beginning of what we now call DRM. Things like SafeDisk, Secu-ROM, and StarForce applied digital signatures or electronic fingerprints to assign a unique number to the disk during the manufacturing process. Secu-ROM was hated for not always accurately detecting legitimate disks, but StarForce was particularly egregious for causing system instability. One of the more entertaining methods of DRM that I have to mention is the kind in which gameplay is simply altered if a pirated copy is detected. Rather than locking a player out entirely, games that employ this method become increasingly changed from how it was originally intended. A famous example of this is the game Serious Sam 3, in which pirates are greeted by a very fast-moving, immortal scorpion enemy that follows them around, killing them endlessly. Now for the much less fun and entertaining forms of DRM. Some games tie their installation to your current hardware configuration, like your motherboard or processor, and register your hardware config at the time of installation to a company server. This means if you upgrade your PC enough, the game won't see it as being the same system, and you would need to reactivate. BioShock would only let you reactivate twice, and after that, you needed to get on a phone call with them to reactivate further. What made this worse is that the phone number that was originally provided in the manual wasn't even correct. The original Mass Effect required you to reactivate once every 10 days with EA. An anti-piracy software called Denuvo is very popular these days, but despite boasting how tough it is to crack, it does get cracked and removed. What's worse is that it absolutely ruins the performance of the games that it's slapped onto. So the pirates who remove it end up having a better experience than the people who spent money on the legit copy. Finally, we have the dreaded always online DRM. This means that you need to have a persistent online internet connection even though you're trying to play a single-player offline game. The year is 2023, and the internet is long past the point of being a luxury. Just about everyone not living in the middle of nowhere has abundant access to very fast internet, and the average person has more devices that connect to it than they can count. Not just your computers, but your fridge, garage door, and maybe even your dog. So why is it a big deal when a video game has the requirement of always being connected to the internet to play? Are people who advocate for its removal just pirates? Well, to me there are two major issues here. The first is that even though you may have a good connection and are always online, that doesn't mean that the company like Ubisoft isn't going to screw up something on their end. Take Assassin's Creed 2 for example. When it first launched, the servers would go down for several days at a time, ensuring that no one on PC could play this offline single-player title. Diablo 3 had the issue of not having stellar server infrastructure, though when has Blizzard ever cared about that in any way? So players who just wanted to enjoy the single-player campaign would frequently experience lag or stuttering. Every action in this game is synced online with their servers for no good reason. The other major issue is game preservation. Even if you have excellent internet service and game company servers are strong and have great uptime, the cost of running dedicated servers is anything but negligible. After enough time, the company running it will decide it's no longer worth keeping up, and they'll move on to newer endeavors. At this point, games that are designed to be always online will never be able to be played again. So much for ownership, huh? No matter what game you think will last forever, it won't. And there needs to be a long-term contingency plan in place for when that happens. Even though Microsoft decided to take dedicated servers for Halo 2 offline, nothing is stopping me from firing up my original Xbox and playing it offline with 3 friends. The same can't be said for games that are always online, and they are doomed to disappear forever without being illegally modified. I think that software that is required to be always online should legally be required to become open source when the owner no longer wants to support it or offer it for sale. There's really no reason for this not to be the case, and it hurts no one. Ultimately, I believe that people who want to pirate will do so no matter what obstacles are there, and these obtuse anti-piracy measures only serve to make legitimate consumers' lives more difficult. If you don't agree, just look at the success of GOG, the game store run by Witcher developer CD Projekt Red. Games are sold there with no DRM, and it has been a huge success for many years now. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Do you think DRM is an ultimately necessary evil, or should we break free of its shackles? Thank you so much for watching this far, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to my channel. It would mean a lot to me. When I hit 1,000 subscribers, I'm going to do a game room tour you won't want to miss.